Welcome to the Gloucester Writers Center's storytelling show, Fishtales. I'm Maureen Aylward, the host and curator of the show. Over the last 2 years, Fishtales has become one of the most popular live events in Gloucester. We feature local storytellers from diverse and interesting backgrounds. For this show, we've tapped once again some of our best local storytellers. Carl Thompson, Virginia McKinnon, Cindy Szymanski, Jimmy Tarantino, Nathan Cohen, Adam Kuhlman, Jim Dowd. We are pleased that Fishtales has become a popular evening event. Shows are scheduled roughly every 6 weeks and are often held at Short and Main, a restaurant on Main Street in Gloucester, and also at other venues around the city. Fishtales is similar to NPR's The Moth Radio Hour, and as such, our storytellers tell true stories that fit around a theme. Tonight's theme is what else? Television. Welcome to the show, and please take some time to visit the Gloucester Writers Center's website for more information on upcoming live Fishtale show in Gloucester. Our first storyteller is Carl Thompson.
I grew up in the farmland of central New Jersey in the 1950s and 60s. Television was a regular part of my daily routine. Our television at the time was a black and white set that had 4 knobs: the on-off volume knob, the channel selector, all 12 of them, the horiz, and the vert knobs. You see, before transistor circuitry, televisions were powered by crystal tubes. The pictures were unstable and would often flip up and down or side to side, and they needed frequent adjustment with the horiz and vert knobs. When I turned off the set, the picture receded into a small, bright dot in the middle of the dark screen, lingering for a moment, and then, when all the tubes discharged their last electricity, the bright dot disappeared into blackness. TV provided then, as it does now, a delightful distraction from real life. My best friend Peter's family didn't own a television early on. His parents preferred reading, and we thought it was an extreme hardship at the time, cruel and unusual punishment. My early favorite shows were cartoons like Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner. Later, I watched odd amalgams like Car 54, Where Are You?, Diver Dan, and Batman. And then much later, when I was perhaps 10, I thrived on war shows like Combat and cowboy shows like Bonanza. Each was as silly as the others, but engaging nonetheless. But the most memorable experience I had with television was not a show at all, but a sort of hypnotism. On more than one occasion, all before the age of 12, I recall becoming so captured by the act of watching TV for long periods of time that I would fall into a sort of trance. My vision would distort as the television retreated into a tunnel, becoming small and far away. Tunnel vision, as it were. Then all my senses became distant. My body awareness becoming undifferentiated, like a tiny bright spot in the middle of darkness. All the while, the I that was experiencing this was the same me as always, only from a distant vantage, way back behind my head. I could snap out of it at any time simply by shaking my head until my normal vision returned. The experience didn't have any particular meaning to me. I just thought it was kind of a cool television-induced altered state. It occurred a number of times, always the same way, and when I mentioned it to my mother, she was concerned and took me to have my eyes checked. There was nothing wrong with my eyes. Eventually, as I moved into my teen years, my attention was drawn away from television, and these experiences stopped. But when I was 18 years old in college, I began practicing Transcendental Meditation. TM is based on a Hindu tradition that leads the meditator into a transcendent frame of mind, where the senses fade into the background and awareness of being becomes the primary experience. Through TM, I learned that my body and my spirit are not the same thing, that my spirit inhabits and enlivens my body, but has its own quite independent existence. For the past 44 years, my meditation practice has changed in many ways, but oddly enough, even now, it's not unusual for me to sit quietly, turn my attention inward, gradually quiet my senses, slowly still my thoughts. Sensory input recedes. Then, much like turning off an old tube-type TV, all the dramas of the world grow smaller, less significant, until they become a single, tiny, bright spot in the middle of a vast emptiness. Then nothing.
This story is titled Solitaire, A Boy's First Crush. When the executives at the Home Shopping Network sat down in their boardrooms to discuss their target demographic, I don't suspect they had me in mind. Not in 1988, at least, when, as a 7-year-old growing up in small-town Virginia, I had less disposable income than your average miner's widow. Just whatever sticky dimes I could scavenge from the cushions of my father's favorite recliner. Still, for the better part of my first grade year, I had eyes for one television channel alone. Unlike my peers, who adored Nickelodeon for its whipped cream-coated game shows, my taste ran in a more refined, more glamorous direction. So for at least 2 hours every day after school, I sat on a rug before a 24-inch Zenith, transfixed by the breathless peddling of oversized cubic zirconia. Of course, I departed from Home Shopping Network's core viewership in other ways. For one, I was free of gout, social anxiety disorder, and anything else that might have kept me cooped up at home, hunched beneath 2 flatulent cats in an Afghan blanket. But most incongruously, I was equipped with a penis, albeit one the size of an uncooked macaroni. The way I saw it, Home Shopping Network had a number of virtues. On an inferior station, a show like MacGyver was interrupted for commercial breaks at moments of peak intensity. HSN, on the other hand, provided one continuous stream of heart-pounding action. As soon as time ran out on a 2-carat blue topaz ring, the camera panned to a flaxen-haired beauty cocking her head this way and that, showing off a pair of simulated tanzanite earrings. If you had explained to me that commercials don't take commercial breaks, I would have stood up, kicked you in the shins, and returned to my tennis bracelets. And unlike the scripted drama on USA, Home Shopping Network derived its suspense from real people and real life. I can remember my stomach tying in knots as the little clock in the bottom corner of the screen ticked toward 0 on a particularly hot bargain. A half-carat diamond pendant, listed at $500, now down to $49.99. Was this really happening? As I looked around my empty house for confirmation, I envisioned people all over the country trying to reach their phones. And it wasn't just fashionable ladies from the society pages, but also frugal grandmothers from Toledo and Oshkosh, hobbling en masse across their kitchens, terry cloth slippers swishing against linoleum. In the countdown's final seconds, I'd jump to my feet, begging them to ditch their canes and dive for the receiver. I keep mentioning women's jewelry because, to me, these were the only shows that mattered. Sure, if I needed a fix, I'd sit through some washed-up actress hawking cold cream. But nothing got me fired up, like just the right gem-laden brooch. I suspect it had something to do with my favorite movie at the time, The Goonies, whose twist ending hinges on a sack bearing the impressively large jewels of a man named One-Eyed Willie. But also, I fell in love with gemologist lingo, bezel, baguette, solitaire, and the fine points of the trade, such as the myriad benefits of a lobster clasp over a simple toggle. I was always on the lookout for opportunities to share my knowledge. For instance, with the bank teller who clicked her manicured fingernails on the counter while I waited in line alongside my mother. Her favorite shade of red polish would be accented perfectly, I was sure, by an emerald bracelet I'd ogled the night before. But on some level, my 7-year-old self was aware that a boy's fixation on shiny, pretty things called for secrecy. Probably this feeling derived from my father, a frank man with conservative tastes in politics. For him, a television show is suspicious if it doesn't feature a stock ticker, or the capture and display of at least one smallmouth bass. As luck would have it, in Richmond, the Home Shopping Network resides on Channel 13, while ESPN broadcasts on neighboring Channel 12. So whenever I heard my father's Chevy Caprice lurch into the driveway, I could conjure a middleweight fight with just a single click. Strangely, while gemstones invited scrutiny, the thrusts of sweaty, bare-chested men were above reproach. On one occasion, I must have forgotten to change the channel before heading off to play in the yard. My father called me into the TV room, where he sat in his recliner, loosening his tie. "Son," he said, more anguished than angry, "what in God's holy name is this?" His index finger flicked toward the screen. My pulse quickened, not at the sound of my father's voice, but at the sight of a gracefully extended hand swiveling at the wrist and studio lights playing on a particularly fetching marquee-cut sapphire. I could say nothing. I was bewitched. "Darn it, son," I heard above the announcer's animated patter. Then suddenly the elegant hand was replaced by the limp head of a 12-point buck decked with arrows. I guess it was inevitable that eventually I would place a call to the home shopping network myself. It was the next step in the logic of my addiction. After months of vicarious shopping, to order now would be the consummation of all my 7-year-old desires. In my household, the clandestine phone call was a risky operation. I can remember chewing anxiously on the spiral phone cord while an automated message put me on hold. When a woman's voice finally came through the line, she sounded much less eager than I expected. "Calling for item 1537C?" she asked. Where was the urgency, the wonderment of the TV announcer who just declared this the steal of the year? Her apathy did, however, make it easier for someone shorter than a potted geranium to bluff his way through the preliminaries of a financial transaction. A worldly and precocious 7, I knew that a dazzling tourmaline necklace couldn't be had by simply asking politely. A bit more obscure to me, however, was the meaning of a valid credit card number. 43? I ventured. Recently, my first-grade teacher had introduced us to the tens digit. As the silence dilated, I reasoned she was looking for a more impressive integer. 82? I continued. The intervention, when it came, was swift. "Honey, how old are you?" Suddenly, her flat telemarketer's voice betrayed the human personality behind it. I must have stammered the truth. "Well, aren't you the cutest thing?" she said. "Do you want to buy this necklace for your mommy?" In fact, I didn't have a plan. That a physical object would have arrived on our doorstep in a lavishly taped cardboard box had not occurred to me. But how could I have told her this? At age 7, I didn't have the language to explain that my reasons for calling were more personal and less concrete. That talking to her answered an urge that had been building for months. Not just to share in the full home shopping network experience, but also to challenge a taboo. Perhaps even to alleviate some inexpressible loneliness. Like my father, she probably wouldn't have understood anyway. But I bet there are others, staring longingly at screens and hunched beneath their cats, who would. Thank you.
Memories of Gould Court, Gloucester, Mass., 1929 to 1939. Gould Court is located just a block away from the American Legion building and the statue of Joan of Arc on Washington Street. On the right is Middle Street, and the next right is Gould Court. The stately steeple of the Unitarian Universalist Church is in view and back of a stone wall and vine-covered fence. Around the corner to the dead end is St. John's Church, separated by another vine-covered fence. I felt so protected by these beautiful churches. My memories are of a magical place. My home was at number 14. My grandparents were the first of Italian heritage to purchase a home on Gould Court. I remember a school assignment to write the history of my street. I interviewed Mrs. O'Malley, the oldest resident. Her husband was the chief of police, Charles O'Malley. She stated when the boulevard was built, many of the houses were moved from the harbor side of Western Avenue to Gould Court. She stated the court was previously referred to as the Irish Channel, and the minister formerly lived in my home. Also, the court was home to many wealthy people in the past. Mrs. O'Malley's grandson, Ralph, became mayor of Gloucester, and the O'Malley School is named in his honor. My home was a Victorian, two-family yellow house, trimmed in white and green, with a climbing rosebush-covered trellis and a large catalpa tree in the front yard and a picket fence. I was born in this house in 1929, and I was married from there on Thanksgiving Day in 1953. In my childhood, the court was not paved, and the DPW, they would send a truck with wooden planks to make a pathway for us to navigate, as the street was a muddy mess during rain and snowstorms. The court was lined with beautiful trees, and there was a red barn with horses for the peddlers. The peddlers came to our door with horse-driven wagons selling fruit and vegetables, meat, live chickens, pots and pans, and dishes, and all sorts of things. The mailman delivered our mail 2 times a day, and Pat the Iceman delivered blocks of ice for our ice boxes. He would chop little chips of ice for all the kids. We were in walking distance to the library, St. Anne's Church, the City Hall, Main Street, and our neighborhood schools. The school bell would ring for school to start at 9 a.m., and we all went home to lunch, and our mothers had a good home-cooked meal for us. After an hour and a half, the bell rang again to go back to school, and we were dismissed at 4 o'clock. Everything was available just up the street from Gould Court on Washington Street. There was an A&P, a First National, Parsons Candy Store, Chanticleer's Ice Cream Parlor, Lane's Variety, Wright's Fish Market. And there was a barber shop and a cobbler shop, and Albie's Bakery. He had day-old pastry for 10 cents a dozen. Charlie Salidas at the Cape Air Market. He kept many families fed during the Depression. Mrs. Salidas kept a book, and she would write down our purchases. And as soon as my dad came home from a fishing trip, my mother would pay her bill. All the stores were closed on Sundays. I lived upstairs from my grandparents. My Aunt Rose lived next door, and my aunts and uncles all lived close by. My beautiful, large Sicilian family surrounded me with love. All the neighbors were welcoming and loved children. Our apartment was heated by our black Linwood stove, and my brother and I took turns going down 2 flights of stairs with a gallon-sized oil can to fill the stove's oil barrel, the oil bottle. I remembered how frightened I was going down the cellar in the dark. There was always a barrel of salted mackerel down the cellar. We took turns emptying the pan of water under the icebox also. In my backyard, there were chickens, rabbits, a duck, mice, and pigeons. My grandparents attended to their large garden of vegetables and beautiful flowers and the grapevines. My grandfather made wine from the Concord grapes. My neighbors had very large families and lots of children. After school, we all played outside. Going home for supper, we had a family meal, home cooking, everyone at the table together. Then back outside to play until the street lights went on. The games we played were hopscotch and jump rope and marbles. We played kick the can, hide go seek, relievo, run sheep run, forfeit, singing songs and storytelling. The older boys would play softball in the parking lot in back of the A&P. They would challenge other neighborhood gangs to play. Winter evenings, we would watch cartoons, putting up a sheet and cranking the handle of a little box that had rolls of tape film. How we delighted in the 3 little pigs, reading the captions in unison. We played board games and cards. My mom would read to us. We read lots of books, and we made taffy candy and cookies. My favorite were the Italian cannolis. We listened to the radio, and we took turns winding up the Victrola to play our favorite records. My dad was the second car owner in the court. He was offered a ride home one day, and when he remarked how well the car ran, he was offered the car and driving lessons for $50. Eventually, families of many nationalities purchased homes in Gould Court, like other neighborhoods in Gloucester, Mass. My happy childhood was in my happy place, a place called Gould Court. Okay, thank you.
In the summer of 2000, I spent 5 weeks studying music in Ghana, in Accra, and I was living with a host family. And in the first couple of days that I was there, a lot of the people in the compound where we were living would ask me if I knew Meg or Cole or Caitlin or Vanessa or Virginia. And there were other students from my college who had stayed in the same host family. And so I assumed that they were talking about some people that maybe I actually did know from back home. And it was only after that, during family dinner times with my host family, where we would watch Sunset Beach, which was a trashy American soap opera, that I started to recognize these names as characters from the soap opera. And, there was, I don't know how to start unpacking this idea that maybe I personally knew these characters from back home. But before we even get there, just the idea that I would know, that I would be friends with somebody like Cole from Sunset Beach. I mean, Cole's the guy who impregnated Caitlin and Caitlin's mother, the same mother who tried to steal Caitlin's baby. Let me back up for a minute. Sunset Beach, in case you missed it, is an Aaron Spelling failed soap opera circa 1997 in the U.S. It was a daytime thing in the States, but it was a primetime thing in Ghana. That these kids thought that I might be friends with somebody like Virginia, who drugged Vanessa, and then while Vanessa was unconscious, impregnated Vanessa with Tyus's stolen sperm so that Vanessa seemed unfaithful to her partner, Michael. Michael was sterile. The thought that these kids thought that I might have been with these characters on Terror Island, where there was a masked murderer who was picking off characters one at a time. This idea that maybe I was with Mark Wolper in his dying moments when he, in his last breath, unmasks the killer and notices that it's Ben's face, only it wasn't Ben, it was Ben's evil twin, Derek. Kind of blew my mind that maybe they thought that I was connected really personally with this. This is a story about perception. And I was appalled that we were watching Sunset Beach every night in Ghana, and I was confused by this misunderstanding that I might be personal friends with these characters. But the perception of American culture was so strong through this lens of this awful soap opera that it was palpable. And it was so palpable that it seemed plausible in some ways that these characters had actually managed to become real. Anyway, these perceptions really affected how they had a direct bearing on how I was treated in Ghana and how the kind of assumptions that people made about me. So I was white, and I was one of the only white people within several miles of where I was staying. And I was reminded of this quite often because little children would point at me and scream and cry when I walked by sometimes, because for many of them I was the only white person that they had seen. And grown men would stop me on the street and they would say, "Hey, white man, what right do you have to be in my country?" And we would sit and we would talk about race relations and economic disparity. And I really appreciated this bluntness. I found it really refreshing to have this label so out front so that there was a mechanism by which we could have real conversations and peel back some of these layers so that our obvious differences were smaller. We could get past those quicker so that we could talk about what we had in common, which at the end of the day is most things. Another assumption, another perception was that because I was American and because I was white, I was also wealthy. And in some ways, if you can afford to fly across an ocean, you are wealthy. But a lot of people had a really hard time believing that I had spent all of the money that I had in order to get to Ghana. And this perception of me as a wealthy person was new to me. I mean, I was a college kid. And it played out in both big ways and small ways when I was in Ghana. An example of one of these larger moments, I walked into a church hall where there was a fundraiser, there was a concert. And just as I was walking in, total coincidence, the person at the microphone who was raising money asked, is there anybody here who can put up $5,000 to help us with this building project? And everybody in the room is looking around, is there somebody like that? And here, I've just walked in the door, and here's my white, shining face like a beacon, and the room stood up and gave me a standing ovation as I looked at the floor and shuffled into the corner. This dynamic played out in smaller ways, too. There were different prices for white foreigners and for locals. I had shown up in Ghana without a towel. It hadn't occurred to me to bring a towel. And so my host mother, Angela, who's an imposing woman, brought me next door to buy a towel from the neighbor who inexplicably was a towel salesman, and she had a room stacked high with towels. And the Ghanaian price was 8,000 cedis, and the price quoted for the white man was 12,000 cedis. It's a difference of 40 US cents. But my host mother was insisting that I should get the Ghanaian price, and the neighbor was standing firm on her price of 12,000 cedis. And what ensued was this argument back and forth as they bartered. My host mother arguing 10,000 is a fair compromise, and the neighbor saying absolutely not. It's 12,000 or nothing. And so my host mother fanned out 12,000 cedis. There were 2,000 CD notes each, and she held it out to the neighbor, and the neighbor took it still in its fan. And my host mother picked up the towel and turned to me, and reaching, plucked one of the bills from her neighbor's hands and yelled, "Run!" to me. And we ran back just next door. And I told my host mother, you drive a hard bargain. And she had never heard that phrase before, and she loved it. And I heard it frequently as she would recount her day's barterings at night over dinner during commercial breaks of Sunset Beach. Sunset Beach. Little by little during my time in Ghana, I started to understand this Ghanaian perception of America through that lens of this garbage soap opera. And then little by little, something unexpected happened. I don't know if it was like watching a train wreck that I couldn't look away from, or if it was a little bit of homesickness, but little by little, I became hopelessly addicted to Sunset Beach. Really addicted to Sunset Beach. Addicted like I would drop what I was doing and rush back to the house to make sure that I had my 30 minutes of Sunset Beach fix with my host family. If I had a wish for Ghana and for other countries like Ghana, one of those wishes might be that the U.S. could put out better media if Ghana is going to take our hand-me-down media. Maybe some better TV. But for those 5 weeks that I spent in Ghana, we were content to be with each other watching Sunset Beach. I'd like to quote something from Sunset Beach. When the moon rises, early, just as the Santa Ana winds kick up out of nowhere and the sun is just dropping out of sight, whoever you meet at the far side of the pier is who you're destined to be with. That's the legend of Sunset Beach. Thank you.
Sometimes I can't distinguish between the real world and the shows I grew up with. My confusion makes me feel like I am lost in space. I spent my childhood escaping into television, not to a poltergeist level, but far enough into other lives so that I could forget my own. That was a good thing, since my life could be showcased on The Twilight Zone and Alfred Hitchcock Presents. I love animals, but where's Lassie when I need her? Or Flipper, with his telegraph-like beeping to get me some help from Ranger Rix? After all, Rix is responsible for animal and human life. Oh, he's in Florida. Never mind. I could appreciate a dad like Andy Taylor. He was always good at reasoning. Maybe that's why he locked into a job as a trial attorney after leaving the sheriff's office. He had done such a great job raising Opie that I was surprised when Opie moved to Milwaukee when he was a teenager. He was already happy in Mayberry. However, while there, he was good friends with the Fonz, who ended up in Vietnam, became a hero, escaped the mental ward, and wanted to start a worm farm with his war buddies. Hey, kind of Vicky if you ask me. However, he did meet up with Gidget, who got rid of her bikini to become a nun. She changed her mind and flew out of the convent when the bandit hit town with Ralph Cramden on his tail. I guess Ralph sent Alice to the moon after all, because she wasn't riding shotgun. But I digress. Opie later became a #1 director, so the move worked to his advantage. Barney Fife, however, went downhill. He became a landlord and wannabe swinger, where three's company, but four's a crowd. The Shazam man, Gomer Pyle, enlisted in the Marine Corps and became a thorn in the side of Sergeant Carter. And surprise, surprise, who would have thought the auto mechanic could sing so beautifully? Golly, even my grandparents listened to his records on their hi-fi. I would welcome a teacher like Cotter. He always had good advice for the sweat hogs. He helped Vinnie Barbarino go from a confused state to winning dance contests on Saturday nights. Later, with greased then short hair, Vinnie stayed alive in many movies, unlike my heartthrob, Keith Partridge, who tries to numb the fact that he is getting older. Thank goodness he wasn't driving the family bus when he got pulled over for all those DUIs. Maybe I can visit the professor. Perhaps he can figure out a concoction made from organic coconuts that will give me a clearer head. Being on the island might be good for me, too. Dobie Gillis forgot about women, fancy cars, and money when he got out of Dodge on the SS Minnow. Life is so much simpler there. However, I find it strange that they've all been there for so long, and the only ones sleeping together are Mr. Magoo and Lovey. I was hoping Mr. and Mrs. Brady might be able to help out, but they have their own hands full with spoiled children. Everything is just hunky-dory except for that annoying Jan, always the poor me middle daughter, jealous of Marcia. So whiny she can't even handle a zit on her face. Boo-hoo, Jan. Put on your big girl pants and get over it. I feel sorry for Alice. She has to wipe their sniveling noses and pick up after them. Why doesn't that butcher marry her already and get her the heck out of there? Hazel, a take-charge maid with Pavlovian mentality of training, was good at cleaning up messes, household and cerebral. If Mr. Baxter did not concede to her way, she would minimize dessert portions. Food does work, doesn't it? Maybe I can feed my inner child some ice cream to get it to focus. When I have 4,077 characters in my head, I feel like I'm at war with myself. I could really use Hawkeye's humor or Radar to find clarity for me. You know, he can always find what is needed when he barters for it. Actually, empathetic Dr. Sidney Friedman might help me figure out why, some days, I have mashed potatoes for brains. I would have loved Dick Van Dyke flying me away from it all in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but he married Laura and was busy working on a TV show. I think they got divorced because Laura got a job as an associate producer of the 6 o'clock news. As I recall, Mary Slaughter was the news writer who went on to captain the Love Boat. Sue Ellen, the man-hungry happy homemaker, became a Golden Girl, who starred big in 2010 in a Snickers commercial, Saturday Night Live, and became hot in Cleveland at 88 years old. She still works as a marijuana-smoking property caretaker. Ah, that explains the Snickers. After Laura left, Dick became a crime-solving doctor with the help of his son, Steve, a homicide detective. Wait a minute, I thought his son's name was Richie. Dick, you dirty dog. Sometimes I'd like to say, beam me up, Scotty, to get away from it all. But with my luck, I'll land on a star and be trekking across the universe until I land in a black hole. Since Spock became a poet, he can't help save me with the Vulcan grip because it embraces his pen. And my hope of hooking a ride to the side of reality with Captain Kirk on the USS Enterprise dissipated when he traded the starship for a police car. Dr. Bones McCoy was the best-known doctor in the galaxy, but never got his degree. So his help isn't an option for me either. I would like to consult Mr. Ed, or my favorite Martian. Yes, it has come to that. I know Uncle Martin stayed on our planet and taught at Ridgemont High, where pothead Jeff Spicoli drove him crazy, and Mr. Ed retired to Snodgrass Farm in Oklahoma, where he gave up his addiction to peanut butter that Wilbur got him hooked on. I might be able to find help at Cheers. Everyone will know my name there, so at least I will know who I am. I can also talk with Cliff Clavin. Since he's a know-it-all, he might be able to help me with reality. And while I'm there, I can get some basketball tips from Woody. I've thought about therapy and would have liked to schedule an appointment with Bob Newhart, but he bought an in and doesn't practice anymore. Fraser Crane is wise, but he is hosting a call-in psychiatry show at a talk radio station. Maybe I should call him. If I can be on TV blurting out my psychodrama, I guess I could do it on the radio. I'd actually prefer to consult his ex-wife Lilith. She danced her way through Juilliard, then became a no-nonsense psychiatrist. So I thought perhaps she could show me some moves to sidestep the chaos, but I heard she turned in her couch and notebook and is doing a stint as chief of staff for Madam's secretary. I guess for now, I'll just take a pill so I can sleep. Tomorrow I will try to borrow Jeannie from Major Nelson, or get a nose job like Samantha and twitch it to make something magical happen, like my return to sanity. Or, well, that would be comforting. Or I could consult Samantha's Dr. Bombay, but with my luck, Aunt Clara will show up and create more of a calamity. I'm hoping for good dreams, so everyone in my head, quiet down, get some sleep. Good night, John Boy. Good night, Cindy. Good night, everyone.
So making a TV commercial is actually an incredibly difficult thing. Even a crappy one actually takes an incredible amount of effort, a lot of expertise. A lot of people get brought onto the set to make things work. And essentially, when you're doing this, you are standing on top of a pile of burning money. And you're just trying to get this thing done before the fuel runs out. And I've worked in advertising for 15 years. I typically was not the guy who got brought down to the shoots or out to the shoots, wherever we went. But in this one case, my first shoot, it was a very technical product. And there were there were like a handful of people at the agency who actually understood how this thing actually worked and why it worked. And we had this terrific idea, and this is like before social media, that instead of using actors to play IT people, IT managers, we were going to get actual real IT people out of the trenches. We were going to bring them there, and they were going to talk about their issues, their problems, and then they were going to talk about why this product was important to them, and this was a terrible, terrible idea. Terrible. This is a terrible idea. We go down to New York, and this wasn't our fault, but even just the disaster starts when we get out of the cab, and the meatpacking district where the studios are in New York is completely blocked off by police, and we can't get around the barriers because there's a Rolls Royce with a nude woman on the hood wearing a full fur coat on. And then she pictures, and it's Fashion Week. It's Fashion Week in New York, and I'm there to shoot an ad about technology, networking technology. So we were able to get our way through the cops and through the different people, and we finally get to our building where the studio is, and out in front is this massive, massive linebacker of a guy in a double-breasted suit with like the Secret Service earpiece who just takes one look at us and he says, "You're in the wrong place." And I'm like, "I'm not in the wrong place. I'm shooting on the second floor up here." "You're in the wrong place." And I take my BlackBerry out and I hold it a highly respectable distance from his face, and I show him, no, we're here, we're shooting. And he takes it from me and he reads, and he finally starts talking into his collar. And after a long conversation, he looks at me and he says, "This is Fashion Week. Mr. Martin Scorsese is in the building. He's going to be shooting all over here. You take your people, you get them where they belong, you stay out of everybody's way, because we're all professionals." We're not all professionals. We are not all professionals. We have 24 IT and IS, information services and information technology people showing up at this place, and they don't know anything. They don't know. They just know they're supposed to be here at a certain place at a certain time. So I get Lindsay, our production assistant, and I say, Lindsay, stand at the elevator and get the people who are coming to our shoot off of the elevator. She's like, how will I know who they are? I'm like, Lindsay, what? So an elevator comes up, this big meatpacking building kind of thing, an industrial elevator. There's cables and doors and things, and the doors open of this grates open, and inside the elevator are 5 people on cell phones in Armani suits. There is a 6-foot-tall Ukrainian woman in 3-inch heels wearing a single ace bandage for clothing. There are boxes and studios, and there's lights and guys with tattoos and earpieces, and in the middle of it is an Indian guy wearing an engineer shirt going, what is going on? I love this. And that is the guy. That's our guy. That's our guy there. See him there? Get the person on the elevator who does not belong and take him to our thing. So that's our guy. So that's Lindsay's job, except that it turns out it's not the only elevator. And because the streets are blocked off and the ways around it, there's stairs and there's another elevator. And my people are running all over this place. They are IT. I have unleashed an unholy plague of IT onto Fashion Week. And they are running around, talking to people, messing with people's technology, talking to camera people, talking on cell phones, going into the wrong sets. I'm getting emails and calls, and angry people are coming up to me, and it is a nightmare. And even worse, they're terrible actors. You hire actors because actors can lie believably, and they know how to act on a set. These guys are just terrible. They mumble through, I am using, no, guys, no, you have to believe, emote the whole thing. So it is a disaster. Finally, the director comes up to me and we wrap for the day. He's like, this is a disaster. The money's burning. Whose idea was this? I have no idea. I have no idea whose idea this was. So I get the people who are showing up tomorrow. They're all in town, and I have everyone show up at the W Hotel in New York. We get one of those standing table things, and I'm trying to read everyone the riot act, except these are IT professionals who have been away from their systems all day. So they've got millions of emails and phone calls, and no one is listening to me. I'm getting increasingly agitated in the bar of the W Hotel, and I'm just freaking out. I'm starting to get, guys, you got to listen to me. I'm going to lose my job here. How we do this tomorrow? And someone tries to take Lindsay's stool because she's gone off to the restroom, and he's got the stool, and I'm just like, that's Lindsay's stool. Leave it. That's Lindsay's stool. You can't have the stool. And the guy's like, it's okay, man. It's cool. It's cool. And he backs away, and everyone's looking. Lindsay's come back from the restroom, and she says, did you just save my stool from Ice-T? I'm like, from what? From Ice-T? From Ice-T the actor? Yeah, original gangster? Cop killer? Yeah, I guess so, but it's your stool. So yeah, and I realize at this moment, an Ice-T, if you're out there, thank you. I have been given a moment of attention. There is a moment of attention that is given to me at this moment, and I take over. I'm like, yes, I saved Lindsay's stool from Ice-T. Now everyone listen, and I tell them the 5 things they need to do and where they need to be and how they need to act the next day. And again, Ice-T, you made this happen. I'm your biggest fan now. And the next day goes fine. Everything is cool. Everyone does what they're supposed to do. We finally get out of this thing with our skins. The money burns out, and we leave. And as we're walking away, our big linebacker guy just says, thank you all for keeping it together. And the studio wants to thank you for helping with the computer yesterday. And I have no idea when that happened, so who did that. Thank you.
Don't believe everything you see on TV. They're just telling you what you need to hear so you'll buy whatever it is they're selling. And believe me, I know, I speak from experience. A few years ago, I had the privilege of appearing on the popular reality show Survivor. My 132-page contract clearly stated on page 67, producers and their affiliates reserve the right to edit to justify the vote. In other words, if you're happy, we can make you look sad. If you're giving, we can make you look selfish. You can be an angel, and we will make you look like the devil, as needed to support the ratings. Sign here, initial there. No problem. I was Jimmy T. I had the ego the size of 10-Pound Island. I was the reigning international Dory champ, Sainbow champ. I wasn't afraid. So before going on location in Nicaragua, we were sequestered for several days with all the other contestants. You eat and relax and exercise all together, but you can't speak to each other. You don't even hear their voices. No communication in any way. So naturally, you judge and form opinions. We were also given several physical and mental tests, which I crushed. So ego inflated. I remember when I went in to meet Jeff Probst and Mark Burnett and all the other producers in the interviews, I told them, there's no doubt in my mind, I'm going to be the alpha male in this group. I knew I was going to go far in the game, and I even started thinking about how I was going to spend $1 million for my children's education. Wrong. I was the 4th contestant voted out of 20. No worries, I was used to losing. I am a rower on an island full of Morrisseys. But because I was voted off early, CBS fully exercised their rights on page 67. They edited to justify the vote magnificently. I became the fisherman who couldn't fish. They made me look like a self-centered egomaniac who just wanted control over the tribe. An annoying loudmouth. All right, so they got that part right. But seriously, I can tell you, it's terribly painful to watch yourself look like a complete idiot on national television, knowing all your friends and family are watching too. It was clear to the whole world I had failed miserably. Total loser. But don't believe what you see on TV. I got to play an amazing game that tens of thousands of people have applied for. I got a 45-day incredible adventure in Nicaragua and Costa Rica. Because a survivor, I've raised over $10,000 for breast cancer victims. I've made great lifelong friends. And most importantly, I got $1 million life lesson on perceptions and what's truly important in life. TV teaches us we are either winners or losers. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's experience that can tell you, survivors just like life don't need to be coming first. The truth is we're all winners in life as long as we're playing the game. Don't believe what you see on TV. You don't need this product or that gadget or this particular diet to be happy. You're already a winner. Just go out, enjoy your life every day, just the way it is.
I don't. I'm the last untattooed man in America, I think. Maybe.
No.
Yeah.
Listen,
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah. It's like,
You wouldn't make graffiti on the Sistine Chapel.
right?